The question of why the modern world emerged first in a small, damp island off the coast of Europe has fascinated and perplexed historians for generations. To walk through the English countryside in the mid-18th century, one would have seen a landscape largely unchanged for centuries, open fields worked by hand, goods crafted in cottages, and the slow, seasonal rhythm of agricultural life. Yet within a single human lifetime, this world began to vanish. By the early 19th century, the same landscape was scarred with canals, crisscrossed by railways, and punctuated by the smoking chimneys of sprawling factories. This was the Industrial Revolution, a transformation so profound that it ranks alongside the invention of agriculture itself. It was not a sudden event but the explosive culmination of pre-existing processes, cultural, social, institutional, and technological, that had been gathering force for centuries, and which came to fruition particularly in 18th century Britain. To understand this revolution, we must examine the unique convergence of agricultural transformation, demographic growth, resource abundance, financial innovation, technological genius, and state policy that together unlocked the modern age. If you're enjoying this journey through history, please give the video a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more stories to life. The foundations of abundance. The agricultural revolution. Before the factory could rise, the farm had to change. The Industrial Revolution was built upon a radical transformation of English agriculture that began in the 17th century. For centuries, English farmers had relied on the open field system, where villages worked strips of land in common, leaving fields fallow to restore soil fertility. This system was inefficient and resistant to innovation. But between the mid-17th and late 19th centuries, an unprecedented increase in agricultural production reshaped the countryside. Pioneering farmers like Jethro Tull, Lord Townshend, and Robert Bakewell introduced new techniques that revolutionized productivity. Tull's seed drill, perfected by 1731, planted seeds in neat rows rather than scattering them wastefully by hand. Lord Townshend championed the Norfolk four-course rotation, alternating wheat, turnips, barley, and clover, which eliminated the need for fallow fields and dramatically increased both crop and livestock yields. The results were staggering. English farmers became second only to the Dutch in productivity, and they were continually adopting new methods of farming. The food supply grew faster than the population until 1770, producing a period of bountiful crops and low food prices. This agricultural surplus meant that for the first time, ordinary English families no longer had to spend almost everything they earned just to buy bread. They could now spend on manufactured goods, a razor for the man, a shawl for the woman, creating the consumer demand that would drive industrial production. But the agricultural revolution had another, more painful consequence. The new methods were most efficiently applied on large, enclosed farms rather than on fragmented open fields. The wealthy landed gentry, realizing they could make their land far more profitable, pushed through a series of parliamentary enclosure acts that privatized common land, destroyed traditional peasant farming, and created a landless rural proletariat. Dispossessed and desperate, these former farmers flooded into the towns in search of work, providing the labor force that the new factories would desperately need. The human engine: population growth and urbanization. The agricultural surplus did more than create demand and displace labor, it fueled an unprecedented demographic explosion. The increased food supply, coupled with improving hygiene and the gradual decline of catastrophic epidemic diseases, allowed the population of Great Britain to surge. In 1700, England and Wales contained approximately 5.5 million people. By 1801, that number had grown to over 9 million, and by 1900 it would surpass 40 million. This population growth was not merely a backdrop, it was a driving force of industrialization. A larger population meant a larger workforce for the factories, but also a larger market for manufactured goods. More people needed more cloth, more tools, more housing, and more fuel. The rising demand, combined with the displacement of rural laborers by enclosure, created a pool of workers ready to staff the new industrial cities. Manchester, the cotton capital, swelled from a modest market town into a teeming metropolis. Liverpool, the great port, grew explosively. The British people were redirecting their labor away from unpaid work for household consumption and toward wage labor, a trend that reflected the increasing commercialization of the entire economy. The gifts of geology, coal, iron, and geography, population and agriculture could not, by themselves, have powered an industrial revolution. The crucial ingredient was energy, and Britain possessed it in extraordinary abundance. Unlike most of Europe, which relied on increasingly scarce wood for fuel, Britain sat atop vast reserves of coal, the energy source that would power the steam age. The largest reserves stretched from Edinburgh to Glasgow, along the coast between Carlisle and Whitehaven, around Newcastle upon Tyne, and through the industrial heartland of central England, marked by the cities of Manchester, Sheffield, and Birmingham. This coal was not only abundant but often located conveniently close to iron ore deposits, lead, and zinc, allowing one of Europe's most important centers of heavy industry to establish itself. This unique mineral endowment created the defining context for British industrialization, guiding technology in new directions that were particularly rich in innovative possibilities. Coal was the essential fuel. It was used to power the steam engines that would drive factory machinery and, later, locomotives. But crucially, coal was also used to smelt iron. In 1709, Abraham Darby discovered a method to smelt iron using coke, a purified form of coal, rather than charcoal. This breakthrough, perfected by the Darby family of Shropshire, allowed for the production of stronger, more durable, and far cheaper iron on an unprecedented scale. Cheap iron, in turn, made possible the construction of the machinery, rails, bridges, and ships that would form the physical infrastructure of the industrial economy. By the mid-19th century, Britain furnished half the world's iron and cotton textiles, and two-thirds of the coal used worldwide came from British mines. Geography further favored Britain. As an island, it was protected from invasion, allowing for stable development. Its long coastline and numerous navigable rivers provided cheap water transport for bulky goods. And its colonial empire, built on the foundations of mercantilism and naval power, provided both a source of raw materials like cotton and a vast captive market for British manufactured goods. The sinews of industry, capital, finance, and empire. The machines and factories of the Industrial Revolution were expensive. A spinning jenny, a water frame, a steam engine, a cotton mill, all required vast sums of capital. That capital had to come from somewhere, and Britain possessed a financial system uniquely capable of providing it. The 18th century had seen a revolution in English finance. The establishment of the Bank of England in 1694, the development of a national debt, and the growth of a sophisticated system of joint stock banks, credit, and insurance created a pool of investment capital that could be channeled into industrial enterprise. This financial infrastructure was intimately connected to Britain's imperial and military power. The British state collected taxes twice as high per capita as the supposedly absolutist French monarchy and spent the money on a navy to protect imperial commerce and on an army to maintain order. The profits of empire, from the slave trade, from Caribbean sugar plantations, from Indian textiles, flowed back to Britain, where they were invested in canals, factories, and mines. Modern capitalism, with its reliance on credit, investment, and financial markets, emerged in 18th century England and provided the engine for industrial takeoff. The spark, technological innovation, all the preconditions in the world would have amounted to little without the machines themselves. The Industrial Revolution was, at its heart, a technological revolution, and its epicenter was the textile industry. The first major breakthrough came in the 1760s. James Hargreaves's spinning jenny, patented in 1764, allowed a single worker to spin multiple threads at once. Richard Arkwright's water frame, 1769, used water power to drive a spinning machine capable of producing strong, pure cotton yarn. And Samuel Crompton's spinning mule, 1779, combined the best features of both, producing fine, strong thread on an industrial scale. On the weaving side, Edmund Cartwright's power loom, developed in the 1780s, automated the process of weaving cloth, allowing for the mass production of cheap, light fabrics. The results were breathtaking. By 1820, a single worker with steam-powered equipment could produce 200 times more cotton cloth than a manual worker just 50 years earlier. Yet the true breakthrough, the invention that truly unlocked the industrial age, was the steam engine. Thomas Newcomen had built the first practical steam engine in 1712, used primarily to pump water out of coal mines. But Newcomen's engine was inefficient, consuming vast quantities of coal. In the 1760s, the Scottish instrument maker James Watt, while repairing a model of a Newcomen engine, conceived a revolutionary improvement, a separate condenser that prevented the massive heat loss of the earlier design. Watt's engine, developed in partnership with the industrialist Matthew Boulton, used 75% less coal while delivering more power. The Boulton and Amp Watt engine, patented in 1769 and perfected over the following decade, transformed steam from a mere pump into a general-purpose power source that could drive any machinery. It was the iPhone of its day, a general-purpose technology that would reshape every sector of the economy. Steam engines were soon employed in coal mines, textile mills, ironworks, and dozens of other heavy industries. By 1800, perhaps 2,000 steam engines were at work in Britain. Steam then revolutionized transportation. George Stephenson's rocket locomotive demonstrated the potential of steam railways in 1829, and within decades, over 20,000 miles of railway track crisscrossed Britain, reducing freight costs by 60% and passenger travel times by 80%. For the first time, the tyranny of muscle, wind, and water power had been broken. The hand of the state, government, policy, and institutions. The Industrial Revolution was not merely the product of market forces and individual genius, it was actively shaped by the British state. Despite its rhetoric of liberty, Britain's parliamentary system was an activist state. The government passed aggressive tariffs, starting with the Navigation Acts, to protect domestic industries from foreign competition. It enforced the Enclosure Acts that privatized the land and created the industrial workforce. It invested heavily in infrastructure, particularly the canal system and later the railways. More fundamentally, the Glorious Revolution of 1688 established a system of secure property rights, parliamentary governance, and the rule of law that encouraged investment and innovation. The British state also fostered the intellectual climate that made innovation possible. The scientific revolution and the Enlightenment had fostered a new worldview that embraced progress and the role of research and experimentation in understanding and mastering the natural world. The British Royal Society of Arts sponsored prizes for innovations in machinery and agriculture and played a pivotal part in the circulation of useful knowledge. Britain's intellectual culture emphasized the public sharing of knowledge, including that of scientists and technicians from other countries, creating a fertile environment for technological borrowing and improvement. The historiographical debate: why Britain first? Historians continue to debate precisely why Britain, rather than France, the Netherlands, or China, was the first to industrialize. For much of the 20th century, the old view held that industrialization happened first in Britain due to rapid, substantial technological advances. Recent scholarship has complicated this picture. The economic historian Robert C. Allen has argued that Britain's success was the result of relative prices and market potential. In Britain, wages were high, reflecting a relatively well-off workforce, while capital and energy were cheap. This unique price structure made it profitable to invest in labor-saving machinery like the spinning jenny, an investment that would not have made economic sense in a low-wage, high-energy cost economy. The historian Joel Mocker, by contrast, emphasizes the intellectual environment. He argues that the Enlightenment meant that Britain was best positioned to take advantage of the ideas and equipment of the age. While many European states benefited from the Enlightenment, Britain was alone in possessing an adequate supply of skilled craftsmen who were afforded the freedom to be entrepreneurial. What is clear is that Britain's industrialization was slower and more incremental than previously thought. Industrial employment increased by just 12% between 1759 and 1851, and total factor productivity grew by only 0.4% a year until the 1830s. Yet by the middle of the 19th century, Britain accounted for 23% of global industrial production, and its workers were the richest in Europe. Conclusion: the Industrial Revolution was not a single event, but a complex, multi-causal process. It was the product of an agricultural revolution that produced a food surplus, a labor force, and a consumer market. It was driven by a demographic explosion that provided workers and consumers. It was enabled by a unique geological endowment of coal and iron, located conveniently close together. It was financed by a sophisticated system of capital, credit, and empire. It was sparked by a series of technological breakthroughs: the spinning jenny, the water frame, the power loom, and above all, the steam engine, that shattered the limits of traditional production. And it was nurtured by an activist state, secure property rights, and an intellectual culture of scientific inquiry and useful knowledge. All these factors came together in 18th-century Britain in a unique and powerful convergence. The result was the greatest transformation in human history since the invention of agriculture, a transformation that lifted living standards, reshaped landscapes, and set the world on the path to the modern age. The smoke that belched from the chimneys of Manchester and Birmingham was more than industrial acne on the face of the countryside. It was the breath of a new world being born. Thank you for watching. If you found this history valuable, please like and subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective and keep the conversation going.